Have you ever wondered what it's like to live under the same leader for decades? In many African nations, frustration is boiling over as citizens watch their presidents cling to power well into their 70s, 80s, and even 90s. For years, people have been calling for change, yet these leaders remain firmly in control, resisting calls to step down and often using undemocratic means to extend their rule. From Paul Biya, who has ruled Cameroon for over 4 decades, to Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, the world's longest-serving president, many are asking, how much longer can these leaders hold on? In today's video, we'll explore 7 African presidents who, despite being over 70, are still holding on to power, fueling growing frustration among their people. How do they manage to stay in control? And what does this say about the state of democracy in their countries? Before we dive in, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more eye-opening content on the world's political landscape. Let's get started. 1. Paul Biya, President of Cameroon, age 91. Paul Biya, at 91 years old, is not only the oldest leader in Africa, but also one of the world's longest-serving presidents. He has been at the helm of Cameroon since 1982, an astonishing 40-plus years in power. While his reign has provided a sense of stability for some, it has also become a source of immense frustration for many Cameroonians who feel suffocated under his lengthy rule. Calls for him to step down have echoed throughout the country for years, but Biya has consistently found ways to maintain his grip on power, often using constitutional amendments, election postponements, and accusations of electoral fraud. Many argue that Biya's leadership has turned Cameroon into a pseudo-democracy, where elections are regularly held, but with outcomes that appear predetermined. Under his rule, the country has faced serious challenges, including an ongoing separatist crisis in the Anglophone regions, rampant corruption, and widespread poverty, all of which have worsened in recent years. His absence from the public eye for long periods has also raised concerns, as many believe he is too old to effectively lead the country. Despite the growing dissatisfaction, Biya shows no signs of stepping down, leaving Cameroonians increasingly frustrated with a leader who seems to be more focused on retaining power than addressing the country's pressing issues. Many now wonder what the future holds for Cameroon once Biya is no longer in office. Will the country see a peaceful transition, or will decades of his control lead to instability? 2. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, President of Equatorial Guinea, age 82. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo has been the president of Equatorial Guinea since 1979, making him the longest-serving non-royal leader in the world. Now, at 82 years old, Obiang shows no signs of relinquishing power, despite mounting frustration from the citizens of Equatorial Guinea who have lived under his rule for more than 4 decades. His rise to power came through a military coup, and since then, his leadership has been characterized by accusations of corruption, human rights abuses, and the concentration of wealth in the hands of his family. Despite Equatorial Guinea being one of Africa's largest oil producers, the majority of its population lives in poverty. This vast inequality, paired with Obiang's long-standing control over political institutions, has fueled resentment among the people. Dissent is often suppressed, and political opposition faces significant barriers, making it clear that democracy is not fully functioning in the country. Critics argue that Obiang has used the country's wealth to cement his rule rather than improving the lives of ordinary citizens. While Obiang has managed to keep the country relatively stable, his lengthy rule is seen as undemocratic, with many viewing it as a family dynasty rather than a legitimate presidency. Calls for him to step down and allow new leadership to emerge have been consistently ignored, leaving citizens disillusioned with the prospect of real political change. With no clear succession plan in place and his son positioned to potentially take over, Equatorial Guinea's political future remains uncertain, raising concerns about whether the cycle of authoritarian rule will ever end. 3. Alassane Ouattara, President of Côte d'Ivoire, age 82. Alassane Ouattara, now 82 years old, has been the president of Côte d'Ivoire since 2010. While his tenure initially brought stability and economic recovery to a country torn by civil conflict, his decision to run for a controversial third term in 2020 sparked widespread frustration and unrest. Many Ivorians had hoped for a democratic transition, But Ouattara's move to change the constitution and extend his time in office was seen by critics as a step toward authoritarianism, undermining the democratic progress Côte d'Ivoire had made. Ouattara had previously promised not to run for a third term, but his eventual reversal of this decision led to violent protests and political tension. His supporters argue that his leadership has been key to the country's economic growth, making Côte d'Ivoire one of the fastest-growing economies in West Africa. However, many citizens feel that his extended rule is eroding democracy as the political opposition faces suppression and fair electoral processes are increasingly questioned. The frustration over Ouattara's continued presidency reflects a broader concern about the future of democracy in Côte d'Ivoire. While the country has seen significant development under his leadership, the undemocratic nature of his third-term bid leaves a legacy of political division and uncertainty. Many Ivorians worry about the long-term consequences of a president who, despite his age, appears unwilling to let go of power, sparking concerns over potential instability once he finally steps down. 4. Hage Geingob, President of Namibia, age 83. Hage Geingob, the 83-year-old president of Namibia, has been in power since 2015, but his long-standing involvement in Namibian politics dates back to the country's independence struggle. While Geingob's leadership is viewed more positively compared to some of his African counterparts, growing frustration is beginning to emerge as economic challenges and inequality persist under his administration. Namibia, though relatively stable, has been grappling with high unemployment rates, widespread poverty, and increasing income inequality, which have all contributed to a growing sense of disillusionment among the people. Although Geingob has worked to attract foreign investment and boost economic growth, many citizens feel these benefits are not reaching the majority of the population. The slow pace of land reform, aimed at redistributing land to the black majority, has also been a point of contention, fueling dissatisfaction. Despite these challenges, Geingob has not faced the same level of public outcry as other long-serving leaders in Africa. However, there are concerns that as he ages, his leadership may not be as effective in addressing the pressing issues Namibia faces today. While he has expressed his commitment to stepping down at the end of his current term, the frustration of a stagnant economy and the slow pace of reform may leave a mixed legacy once his time in office comes to an end. Namibians are increasingly looking for fresh leadership to tackle the country's problems and bring about real change. 5. Azali Assoumani, President of Comoros, age 75. Azali Assoumani, the 75-year-old president of Comoros, has had a unique political journey, having served multiple terms in office. He first came to power through a coup in 1999, ruled until 2006, and returned to the presidency in 2016 after a decade away from politics. While Assoumani has played a significant role in maintaining stability in the small island nation, his tenure has not been without controversy, especially regarding his methods of holding on to power. In 2018, Assoumani held a controversial referendum that allowed him to extend his presidency and potentially stay in power until 2029. This move sparked widespread frustration among Comorians, as many saw it as undemocratic and a blatant attempt to consolidate power. Protests erupted, and opposition figures criticized the referendum as a setback to the country's democratic progress. Despite the unrest, Assoumani continues to govern, asserting that his leadership is necessary for the country's development. Under his rule, Comoros has made strides in areas like infrastructure and tourism, but these improvements have not quelled the discontent over his extended rule. Many citizens feel that their voices are being ignored and that the political system is being manipulated to favor the president's longevity in office. As Assoumani approaches the end of his current term, there is growing concern about whether he will truly step down or continue to find ways to remain in power, leaving the future of democracy in Comoros in question. 6. Isaias Afwerki, President of Eritrea, age 78. Isaias Afwerki, at 78 years old, has ruled Eritrea since the country gained independence in 1993. He is one of Africa's most authoritarian leaders, having maintained a tight grip on power for over 3 decades. Under his rule, Eritrea has become one of the most isolated nations in the world, often referred to as the North Korea of Africa, due to its lack of freedom and tightly controlled political system. Afwerki's leadership has been marked by severe human rights abuses, including indefinite military conscription, the suppression of political opposition, and the imprisonment of journalists and activists. Despite growing international criticism and increasing frustration among Eritreans, Afwerki continues to justify his actions as necessary for national security and stability, pointing to ongoing tensions with neighboring Ethiopia and other regional challenges. Many Eritreans, particularly the youth, are frustrated with Afwerki's iron-fisted rule, which has led to a mass exodus of citizens fleeing the country in search of freedom and better opportunities. Yet despite this, Afwerki shows no signs of stepping down or reforming his policies. His refusal to allow democratic processes and his firm control over the military and government leave little room for political change in Eritrea. As the country faces economic challenges and increasing international isolation, many Eritreans are left wondering how much longer Afwerki will continue to rule and what the future holds for their nation under his prolonged leadership. 7. Yoweri Museveni, President of Uganda, age 79. Yoweri Museveni, now 79 years old, has been in power in Uganda since 1986, making him one of Africa's longest-serving leaders. Initially praised for bringing stability and economic development to Uganda after years of civil unrest and dictatorship, Museveni's rule has gradually turned into a source of frustration for many Ugandans. His continued hold on power, after over 3 decades in office, has sparked increasing criticism, with accusations of authoritarianism, human rights violations, and electoral manipulation becoming more frequent. In 2005, Museveni removed presidential term limits, and in 2017, he pushed through a constitutional amendment to scrap the presidential age limit, allowing him to run for additional terms despite being nearly 80 years old. These moves have been widely seen as undemocratic, with opposition groups, civil society, and younger generations calling for political change. His 2021 re-election was marred by accusations of vote rigging, suppression of opposition parties, and the violent crackdown on protesters, leading to even more dissatisfaction with his leadership. Many Ugandans feel that Museveni's long reign has stifled democracy and that his government is more focused on maintaining power than addressing the country's growing issues, including unemployment, corruption, and poverty. Despite the discontent, Museveni continues to assert his dominance over Ugandan politics, using the military and security forces to quell opposition. The frustration among Ugandans, especially the youth, is rising, with many questioning when Museveni will finally step down and allow new leadership to emerge. As we've seen, these 7 African leaders have held on to power well into their senior years, some ruling for decades and sparking significant frustration among their citizens. While each has contributed to their nation's history, their continued grip on power raises serious concerns about democracy, governance, and the future of their countries. From Cameroon to Uganda, many people are calling for change, urging their leaders to step aside and allow new voices to emerge. But with constitutional changes, electoral manipulation, and the suppression of opposition, the path to true democracy in these nations remain unknown. And what will be the consequences for their countries when they finally leave office? Will there be a smooth transition, or will decades of entrenched rule lead to instability? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the most important stories shaping Africa and the world. If you found this video insightful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think it's time for these leaders to step down, or is their experience still valuable to their countries? We'd love to hear what you think, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content on Africa's political landscape and beyond. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.